So in the BIOS, I think F12 or something is a keystroke. So if you press that, you can go to that setting and change the order this BIOS has to look for the bootstrap loader, because as I said, the BIOS is the one that loads the bootstrap loader. Okay, so it will have to know for where it has to look for the bootstrap loader, right? So the BIOS will have a list of things. It will say hard disk, and then external disk, 1, 2, depending on those interfaces. So if you have, say, flash drive interface for a flash drive, it will list those interfaces. And then if you have a CD drive, it will list that interface. And then if you have a floppy drive, it will list that interface and so on. Okay? Normally people set the hard disk as the first thing it has to look for to load up an operating system. But if you have, say, a brand new hard disk to which you want to install something, right? You probably want to go through a floppy disk, or in the olden days, or nowadays use a CD drive to install. Then you have to make sure you change the BIOS settings so that when system is booting up, it looks into that drive. If you want to load your operating system from the CD drive and then install the operating system on the hard disk, so make sure you change the BIOS settings so that it loads the operating system, the bootstrap loader, from the CD drive. So that's what you have to do when you have to reinstall your operating system, which is on a CD drive, the bootstrap loader. You have to make sure you change the settings. If you see people doing installation, they will try to go to the BIOS and change. Okay? But then once you install the operating system from the CD drive, you have to make sure to go back and change. Why? If you leave it as it is, then every time you boot up the system, it will try to read from the CD drive, right? And if something is not there, again, you might notice, especially the floppy disk. If you have plugged in a floppy disk, right, and the system is booting up, you will get an error message, typically. You have noticed it? What's that?
Voice command.
BIOS command?
Voice.
Voice, yes. There is a familiar thing, I think I have that message here. What is that called? The message, it will come like a message box, message window, not system disk or disk error. That's the familiar error, right? So it will ask you basically to load a disk, because the reason why you're getting that error is it's not able to locate a bootstrap loader in a floppy disk. It may be a very general floppy disk that you have plugged in, doesn't have all this bootstrap loader. But if your BIOS setting is such that it has to first look into the floppy disk, then if the floppy disk is there. Also remember, for example, if the BIOS setting is like a floppy disk, then a CD drive, then a hard disk. If they are not there, it will not comply. It will look the first thing that is there. If a CD drive is not there, a floppy drive is not there, if a hard disk is there, it will try to load the bootstrap loader from there. But if we have a CD drive, CD disk loaded, then look into CD disk if the order is like this. Okay? And if the CD disk does not have a bootstrap loader on it, then you complain that it cannot load the operating system. You see what I mean? So, you be very careful what is connected to your machine at boot time. Okay? Why? If you have a boot sector virus, okay, on your CD drive or floppy drive, and your BIOS is looking at them first, right? The boot sector virus gets activated. Remember I said it needs to be activated. So when the BIOS is trying to run that bootstrap loader, basically the boot sector virus portion in your floppy or CD, it gets activated. And it automatically infects your hard disk. Okay? So the boot sector virus will be intelligent enough to locate the boot sector of your hard disk and infect that. So if you have someone giving you a flash drive and that say has a boot sector virus on it, and it's just plugged into your computer, and you're booting up your computer, then your hard disk will be naturally infected by the boot sector virus. If your setting is to read them like this. always not preferable to attach it. Okay. Sakya, any question?
I have a question.
Yes.
In some cases where you have a CD and a CD1 and you're trying to do the hard drive, it doesn't complain and it doesn't do it. It just stays there for a while, like for 10 minutes or something. So I'm wondering what's happening during that time.
It should at least say, can you repeat? It's not complaining, but
It doesn't complain, but it doesn't do anything. But the thing is, I don't wait long enough to see what's going to happen. Like it takes about 10 minutes, and I just want to open up and set down the CD.
I'm sure the CD doesn't have any boot sector virus on it. Because if that is the case, I suspect there is something going on. Because typically, if there is no bootstrap loader, and you're trying to reload the operating system from the CD or boot up from the CD, you have a complaint that you can't find the bootstrap loader. If that CD is infected with a virus, it may prevent that message to pop up, and it may run in the background and infect. The 10 minutes or nothing is happening, it may be infecting your hard disk.
I know what he means. When I had a Windows computer, I used to do the same thing. Like, if I had a CD, just with like software or something, it would, but mine would prompt me, and the message would come up and say like, there's some kind of error or something.
The end of what I told you. Yeah. It had to show an error if you're trying to boot up in this order. It may be the order is the other way, and I don't know what's going on there. If your CD is supposed to be read after the hard disk, then I'm not sure. Then it has to boot from the hard disk. Why is it waiting for you to?
I think it's before the hard disk.
Before the hard disk.
Yeah, I know what's going on.
Right. Okay. So, now as I said, the boot sector viruses don't really crash your system right away. They may stay dormant for a while, and then you'll start getting more problems. Okay, because a virus, it will try to cause as much damage as possible, right? So if it is just causing showing you the blue screen and not able to boot up, then probably you will remove that virus. You will know that your system is infected. You will remove that, right? So boot sector virus may stay dormant for a while and then really show up its effect. Now, in order for that, it will really, what it will do is, if the virus code that is really infecting the boot sector will point to the real bootstrap loader. When the boot sector is infected with the virus code will kind of shift that bootstrap loader to some other portion of your hard disk. Okay? But the virus code will know where the real bootstrap loader is. So when you are booting up your system, it is the boot sector that is really being looked at by the BIOS. But the virus code will kind of silently pass the control to the bootstrap loader. So the bootstrap loader will kind of get loaded from some other location, not the boot sector, from some other location to the RAM. So which means you are able to boot up the system, right? You see what I mean? You are able to boot up the system even if it's infected with the boot sector virus for a while. So it depends really when it really wants to show all its effects. But why it wants to do this? Let's say now kind of an innocent or kind of a good flash drive or CD disk is connected to your machine, and your hard disk is infected with the boot sector virus, right? Well, if you have connected to them at boot time, and this is what is happening, the computer is booting up, you see again the virus code is activated. It will infect those external media, whatever is connected to that machine. So it will infect those things that are connected to it by letting up the machine to boot up, right? So both ways, it's not a good idea to have anything connected to your machine while at boot time. If your floppy disk or CD drive CD disk is infected, it will corrupt your hard disk if they are infected with boot sector virus. Or if your hard disk is infected with boot sector virus, it may infect your floppy flash drive or CD drive at boot time. Okay? So this is called a stealth technique. Viruses sometimes follow this technique called stealth technique, which means trying to hide instead of showing the real effects right away. So it will, because if they show the real effects right away, they will be caught, or they are going to remove them, right? So they're trying to cause more damage by trying to hide for a while. So this is by like pointing to some genuine code instead of showing up the effects. It's called a stealth technique.
Dr. Meg,
Yes.
I had one that said, when it was doing the boot up, it said, can't find a network adapter. What is that totally different?
That's different. That's probably at boot time. Not sure why it use it as a boot time. Anybody knows? Network adapter?
Maybe the network card went back.
The what?
Yeah. I think what you remember. I think I had a line here. The BIOS is supposed to check every hardware connected to a machine is working fine. It complains about even the battery. If your battery is going to go down, the adapter or network adapter, it complains about that. So it's probably a warning that you have to replace it, or if it's already not working, it will complain about that. Yes. So as part of its functionality, in addition to loading the bootstrap loader, the BIOS is also supposed to check all the hardware. This kind of like what do you call it? Before you start anything, you test everything, all the hardware is working fine. That's the time you get the error message. Okay. And the first boot sector virus called Brain, and it was supposed to be only 3K to 7K, so it's not a big piece of code. The virus code is only 3K to 7K. Okay? And it really follows the stealth technique. People are not able to find out right away. Okay. Any questions so far? Alright, so now we'll move on to what's called virus signature. So this is going to be used by what's called an antivirus scanner. Antivirus scanners, when you work with them, they probably say, what, you have to update your antivirus scanner, right? So you have to frequently keep updating this antivirus software. Why?
What's new?
Huh?
New attacks are being created.
What's that?
New attacks are being created.
New attacks, but basically as new viruses are being created, right, the antivirus scanner needs to know what is called the signature of those viruses. The signature is basically a byte pattern. Okay, so what is, ultimately the virus is a code, right? So what is the kind of the binary pattern of those viruses, the virus code? Okay, so I have an example here. This is the byte pattern signature for the redworm, the code redworm virus. If you're aware of it, it was very popular some time back. So this is the kind of a signature of the code redworm virus. Okay. So all the antivirus scanners need to know the signatures of the known viruses. So if you have a new virus and the antivirus scanner doesn't know its signature, it will not detect that. Okay, so that's why it's very important you have to constantly keep on updating your antivirus scanner. Okay, is that clear? Okay. So viruses are intelligent, or virus writers who have developed or comes up with the virus code, they're intelligent. Why? If they develop a virus and eventually all the antivirus scanners come to know its signature, they'll be able to capture it, right? So what they'll try to do, they'll try to develop viruses that can change its signature dynamically with time. So it may have one byte pattern or signature once, and after a while it may change to a different pattern, byte pattern, but still do all the damage it can do, and then after a while it can change, right? So we call such viruses, there are two types of such viruses. One is called polymorphic virus, and as a sub category of this, they can be also encrypted polymorphic viruses. And another category of viruses are called metamorphic viruses. Again, if you have taken a biology course, you might have come across this term morph, right? What morph means? Form. Form means different shapes or different ways you can assume things. Okay? So virus will try to get into different forms to basically confuse an antivirus scanner. So this is like a typical virus that gets attached to the, you see this is like say an application or a program, has a header, a version or actual program. The virus code gets attached maybe at the body header or let's say next to the header. So when the program is activated, the header runs and then the virus code runs before the rest of the code runs. Right? So this is a typical virus infecting an executable or some program. Okay? Now, instead of, because if you just have like this, all your virus code attached, eventually the antivirus scanners will get to know its signature, right? So one way to do this is actually metamorphism. You split the virus code and kind of distribute it throughout your host program which you are infecting. Okay? So right after the header you have a jump statement. You know jump statement from your architecture course, what it does, it jumps to the instruction where you say you have to jump to, right? So you have a jump instruction and it jumps to this location in memory, and then this is, you have a part of the virus code. You see here, you are trying to run the whole virus code, right? The way you are running it is you have a jump, the control goes here, and then after you finish this, you jump to this piece of code, and then you jump again back to this and you run the original program. So you have split it into two parts and you're running these two parts still one after the other. You're jumping from here to here and then jumping to here, so then going back. So you're not really losing any functionality. But what you're doing, you're splitting the virus code into two parts and using the jump instructions, you're managing how the execution is to be done for the virus code. Right? But what you are achieving by this, you are no longer having a particular signature, the byte pattern. You are kind of breaking it up, right? You know, because a virus scanner will be programmed to look for this byte pattern. And if it cannot get the same thing or very similar to that, right, it will not be able to catch that virus. Okay? Because this piece of code doesn't really reflect this. Right? If a virus, this is where the signature-based detection and anomaly-based detection comes. If it's a purely signature-based antivirus scanner, it looks for a 100% match to the byte pattern. Whatever it comes across has exactly matched to its database, the antivirus scanner database. Right? If it's an anomaly-based thing, if it is say 70% or 50% to what it is there, then it may raise a flag telling that this looks like a virus. Okay? But remember, people don't want to be annoyed with too much of what is called false positives. What is false positive? When you study the inclusion textbook chapter?
When it says it's a virus and it's not.
Yeah, it complains it as a virus, but it's not really a virus. We don't want too many false positives because then people will just turn off the alarm and make it like even if it detects one, it cannot raise the alarm. Right? So that's like a trade-off. So this is the idea of metamorphic virus. You kind of break it up into several sub-parts and distribute it around, and using those jump instructions or some kind of dummy instructions, you make that make it very difficult to be able to detect a pattern, a byte pattern or a virus signature. Okay? So such kind of viruses are called metamorphic viruses. And you realize that there should be something that splits it. So let's say this is one form. Like instead of like say 1000 bytes is the size of the virus code, I split it up into say 500 bytes and 500 bytes. I could split it up into 3 parts, like 200, 500, and then 300, or any pattern, right? So you can have innumerable number of forms of the same virus. Okay? But there should be some piece of code within this virus code that's called what is called the morphing engine. What is that morphing engine supposed to do? This is the piece of code within that virus code that will decide what form the virus code will take the subsequent instances. So in one time you activate the virus code, it will take this form, and the next form it will take will be decided by the morphing engine. Okay? So remember what it does. When this program is infected, you run this program, this form of the virus runs. When this form of the virus runs, what it will do? It may infect some other program or a file on your system. So this is say file A, and this is how it's infected. So when this virus tries to infect a file B, it may not attach file B the same pattern. It may split it up into 3 parts and attach to the file B as 200 bytes, 500 bytes, 300 bytes, as I said. But what decides how it has to split or change its form? This morphing engine. So the morphing engine should be part of the virus code, alright? And that will run and decide, okay, this is how I'm going to have my new form. When I infect the other file, this is how I'm going to get attached to that file. Okay? And when that file is being run, or that program that you are infecting is being run, the morphing engine will again decide what form it will take the other file it's going to infect. So you see what I'm telling? So every time a virus will be run, the morphing engine decides how it's going to spread, kind of what form it will take up, what new form it will take up. Clear?
Clear.
So if it's the same form in all the files it's infecting, it's easy for antivirus scanner to detect. So that's why each new file a virus infects, each time it's run or activated, it will take a different form. So that's how this metamorphic viruses work. Yes?
Have you heard about antivirus companies creating or making up their own viruses?
Right.
Do you think that's true?
I've heard of it, but it's basically it's kind of strategy to force you to renew their license. I know if you are, say, purchasing a license, a subscription from an antivirus company, it will be valid for certain time, say 2 years or something, right? By the time you are approaching the 2-year period, your machine will start behaving sometimes crazy.
Because of them?
Right. So the antivirus scanner itself will make your machine to do certain things. And I've seen that. And when you call them, they will say, oh yeah, we have come across some new virus or new kind of malware, whatever. And your current license doesn't support it. If you renew it, our new version will kind of remove that or things like that. So kind of forced kind of update or kind of renew that license. It's true. I heard a story from a person who has worked for an antivirus company that they are doing that.
Wow.
Is that legal?
Huh?
That was my question.
I cannot say.
It's only illegal if you get caught, right?
Right. Right. If you can show, you're recording it in here.